And the gods looked down and they said, hey, you know, sometimes a penultimate episode feels like the ultimate episode. I'm Alex.
And the god of the clunkers looked down and said, yep, you're sinking, car. You've had a good life, but you're old and no one can drive you any longer. Bye-bye. I'm Justin.
I'm Pete, and yeah, that shit was sad. Everybody else is looking at the ghosts and the spirits, and I was like, look at all the dead cars. This is the worst.
To be fair, you do the same thing with real-life dead children as well, right, Pete?
Yeah.
You're always looking at the cars around them.
Don't take Pete to the junkyard. He sobs like a maniac.
Oh, man, that's rough.
We're going to be talking about the second-to-last episode of Season 3 of American Gods, The Lake Effect, and potentially second-to-last episode ever, though I kind of doubt it. I have my doubts about this not continuing past this point. No, I mean, I think we're going to get a Season 4. This is getting into raw speculation. Nobody is watching this show live at this point. Yes. We are a large majority of the viewing audience at this point for this series.
That's satisfying. Just from as a reporter, as a journalist, like it's great to really be speaking to the people.
Neither of those things.
But if that is happening, we're definitely heading to a big ending point here with this episode. Not only are we wrapping up a lot of stuff that happened this season, but we're getting to fans of the book, to fans of the show, big moments at the end of the episode here as well, which is very exciting. As usual, spoiler warning, we already spoiled what happens to Clunker. I'm sorry, it did in fact fall through the ice. But if you haven't seen The Lake Effect, go watch it. We're going to talk about some of our favorite moments of this episode. But the big overall things that you need to know is that Shadow is dealing with the stuff in Lakeside, wrapping up the storyline there. He discovers, as I think we suspected, Justin and me a little harder suspecting because we read the book and we knew the answer to this. But Pete figured it out too. That Hinzelman, Julia Sweeney from SNL, not that great. Lady. Yeah, we're a little wrong about baking people into pies, I think.
Yes,
a little off there.
We haven't gotten the recipe yet. It's like that's another. It could be a side gig.
That's what the last episode is about. But Hinzelman is a god herself. She owed a debt to Mr. Wednesday that he was cashing in, and it all goes down in this episode. We find out that for years she's been keeping the town steady and happy by sacrificing people in these clunkers. She gets torn apart and on fire, so we're probably not going to see her anymore. And Shadow wraps things up with his landlord. She's moving out of town. So that's it for Lakeside, I guess. And that's but on the other end of the spectrum, Wednesday, depressed Wednesday, if you will, is traveling around.
Hump day.
Can't even eat his Czernobog
again. What?
Can't even eat his pancakes. He's so sad.
Those were good-looking pancakes.
Oh, man,
this is some real syrup pornography in this episode.
Yeah.
So Mr. Wednesday is traveling around, decides he wants to broker a deal with the new gods, meets up with, thankfully, Crispin Glover, Mr. World, and they don't broker a deal. In fact, the new gods in the background, of course, have been working with Laura Moon. She is now in the possession of Odin's spear, working with her sexy new leprechaun, who she decides not to have sex with, mind you.
Yeah.
Talk about a leprechaun.
You have one flashback of Dane Cook, and you're like, you know what? This isn't a good idea.
Oh, wow.
I mean, same thing. Whenever I think about one of his comedy specials, I'm like, turn back.
Oh, man.
See, for me, I'm like, man, that Dane Cook's a real big leprechaun.
But Laura comes by, and just as Mr. Wednesday is walking out, she throws the spear. Czernobog is not able to stop it. Liam, the leprechaun, jumps away to his pot of gold, and Mr. Wednesday ends the episode impaled on his own spear, presumably dead, and that's how we end things. There was one other plot line that, Technical Boy. Technical Boy is finally figuring out who he is. What happened with Technical Boy this episode? I'm looking over my notes. And
he got off the table.
Yeah, big moves. He got off the table and stood on the floor. And he put his hand through the little puppets. He's trying to find Artifact 1.
Artifact 1.
He was sort of taking back his power here.
Right.
And so he's like ready to move.
Okay, but yeah, the two big things that we got the Mr. Wednesday track, which intersects with the Laura track, and then Shadow Moon. And at the very end of the episode, as Mr. Wednesday, quote-unquote, dies, Shadow feels him dying, and then the Ravens gather outside of Shadow's house, presumably past from Wednesday to Shadow Moon. So there we go.
Well, it seemed like the crows were slowly turning into light.
I think a light was coming. Also, it could be like the morning. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But I think it was like the power of Wednesday coming to Shadow.
I thought it was like the thunderclap that Shadow heard that was like, oh, that's my father dying. And then two crows outside were like, we're going to make it real bright so this really sinks in, dude.
This is my fault. I just want to emphasize because I got it wrong first. Ravens. They're ravens.
They are ravens. And what birds do you know that like shoot light out of them?
Ravens do that.
Huh. Okay. It is. Pete is our resident ornithologist.
How is a raven like a writing desk? They both shoot out light.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, that's an old joke you said?
Maybe.
Wow. That sounds like a joke that your English teacher in high school is like. This really cracks me up. It's in the back of this Edgar Allan Poe book. How is a raven like a writing desk? And the class is like, fuck you, Mr. Johnson.
Now, before we get too into it, I am curious what you think overall about the wrapping up of the Lakeside storyline. Of course, what you thought about everything that went down with Mr. Wednesday. There was certainly a lot that we've talked about whether they would actually be able to go through with killing Wednesday or not, and that certainly seems like what they did here. So, Pete, what's your take on both of those storylines?
Well, first off, I think that I was very happy with how all went down with the SNL lady. It was very much like the fun moment for the viewers to be like, we knew it. Yeah, it was totally her the whole time. But it was also very satisfying how quickly, Moonshadow he stopped being Mike and started being Moonshadow again, which was very nice. But then he figured out what to stab her with, and that went really well. And then he just got to, after you murder a god, sitting outside their house and just watching it burn to the ground is that kind of like Ocean's 11 moment where you're watching the fountains. You know what I mean? It's like a nice to take a moment, enjoy your work a little bit, guys?
Yeah. I also think they were terrified because they did not see coming what happened to them. And Shadow had just found hundreds of bodies under the ice and cars. Is obviously depressing. And
but they got to see the ghost people, so it's fine.
He woke up in a strange bathtub, which is something that, usually that's a problem.
Yeah, usually you're missing at least a couple of kidneys at that point.
Yeah. I don't know. Every time it's happened to me, I have a bunch of extra kidneys put in.
Oh, wow.
You are chock full of kidneys, my friend.
I'm mostly kidneys. God, my urine is crystal clear. It's beautiful.
You get other people's urine, right?
Yeah, honestly, I'm like, a different day, different urine.
Wow.
That's what I always say. What was your take on this, Justin, on this episode?
I like this episode a lot. I mean, this show, because there are so many plot threads flying around, it feels like now they're sort of letting some go, they're tying others up, and it really feels like it's getting to it, which is something that this show has sort of had a hard time with, I think. It was always sort of forward casting in all the seasons leading up to this one, and now this feels like it's like, no, we're making some definitive choices.
And also, I don't want to get too deep into the episode without talking about the first thing we get to see. We get to see this car, this sweet Lincoln, rolling down the road without a driver, no human. So it's just, you got to really just enjoy the whole car. What's going on inside. It was just
no human getting in the way. You prefer a car driving alone.
It's nice to see it. You know what I mean? Just to focus on the car a little bit.
It's
really give the car the full shot.
Like how some people like watching wild horses running in the distance. You're like, I love seeing a car without a human dirtying the steering wheel.
Yeah. Messing things up. And she, it was frustrating because then it cut to her and she was clearly not respecting the car or other people. She was on her phone texting. And, that's a little frustrating to watch. And then to cut to that, to almost pancakes. I mean, that was a frustrating kind of like a highs and lows of like, look at this amazing car. Oh, somebody who doesn't respect it. Somebody who's too sad to eat pancakes. And it's like, oh, that's a 1-2 combination.
Now, let me ask you, Pete, when you're walking around Philadelphia, do you occasionally break into a car, take the parking brake off, and then slap it on the tailpipe and be like, "Go be free,
go free, go
you've
free,
earned
man.
this. Run,
Yeah.
be yourself."
It's always weird when the owner of the person whose car I'm talking to comes back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm still talking with them.
Let me just repeat what you said. The owner of the person's car I'm talking to.
Yeah.
You're talking to a car.
Sure.
Does the car ever talk back to you, Pete?
Not yet, but I'm going to find one that does.
Someday. Absolutely.
have
How'd
my
you feel
Knight
about the
Rider
clunkers,
dream.
Pete? I know you kind of talked about this already, but the clunker finally went through the ice. I thought the scene was real good, and I like the reveal here. It seems so obvious in retrospect what they were going for with the elephant trunk thing, that the money's in the trunk. But, it's a dead body of a child is in the trunk, but same sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's somebody's money. It was finally, it was just a little bit, because, this was Mike was being real slow, but finally he kind of caught on with the glowing coin. And then also, stop and read those books you were given early on that had all the keys to you figuring this out. So it was nice that, he started to, be less Mike and more Moonshadow.
So let me ask you, Shadow Moon, was the Ganesh, the elephant, working against... Why is the elephant there? Is it like an undercover god that Hinzelman doesn't know about? Because it seems like the Ganesh was trying to reveal Hinzelman.
Right.
And it worked, obviously.
It is a weird thing because it feels like a different pantheon than what we're dealing with Hinzelman.
Yeah.
And with Wednesday is Norse. I think Hinzelman is also Norse, was the implication there?
I think so, because it sort of feels like same world, and I haven't reread the books in 15 years, so I don't remember everything that happens, and I haven't reread it because we're watching the show. But I do feel like it is sort of about Norse stuff. This whole area.
The only thing that confuses it, though, is we have that cut back to the Thunderbird and the Native American gods.
Yeah.
That I couldn't quite connect the two together, whether they're getting vengeance on a Norse god, whether there was something paying there. It felt like there was a little bit of a detail missing. Maybe I just didn't pick up on it necessarily, but there was something there that it felt like either still needs to be told, wrapped up in the last episode, or they were just hoping that you draw your own conclusions.
Yeah, and maybe, we don't know what the full sort of plan here is. It feels like this, despite everything that happens, I still think Wednesday he's still playing, this is part of his game. So we don't actually know, maybe the Ganesh was part of, revealing Hinzelman was part of this sort of putting Shadow in just the right place where he needs to be.
Yeah.
Also, Lakeside could be just a town where gods just hang out.
That's a great concept for a show.
Yeah.
I think it's I think it's kind of like other gods rebelling against the killing of these children and stuff, and trying to help, Shadow Moon get to the bottom of this.
That's interesting.
Maybe that would be remarkably good-hearted for the gods that we've seen on the show. They're like, whoa, killing children's a little too far, given that they basically do anything at this point, but I hear what you're saying.
I thought
it also could be like a god trying to get... Shadow Moon to listen to them for hey, if you do this right, maybe you could help me out with this other thing type of,
Yeah. I guess the thing about this show is we never quite know what the motivation for any of the gods is. It feels like they're always under the gun and barely getting by, and they're fighting each other for something that they don't even seem to understand. It's just they fight because it seems like they have to. I guess the implication is there's a diminishing amount of worshipers. There's too many gods, not enough worship, and they want to take control. The new gods want to be what the old gods were, but the old gods are like, what we got ain't that great. We're losing power. So it feels like, and maybe that the idea is Wednesday's plan is ultimately sort of a restructuring of all of that so that there can be, the worship can come to him and who he chooses, and he can sort of be the king god.
Well, it's going to be rough for him to do that since he's completely 100% dead, though, right?
That is,
yeah, but
100%.
It's also king gods is very much like king bread. You need a bunch of dead babies in the cake.
Yeah, Yeah. Hold on, let me just write that down. I have to. I should remember that.
For that case you're building against Pete, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't take case, scrapbook, murder board.
Okay.
Something. It's called. I mean, they're calling it state's evidence, but I'm not calling it that.
What do you think about this? I mean, I think, regardless of what you think, and I think it's perfectly natural to think, okay, Wednesday is pulling another con, something else is going on here. But they do a really good job of selling it, I thought, at the end of this episode.
The end was great. That whole, just the way it was shot, where like you see Laura roll up and she gets her action movie moment, but then when everything goes black,
that was funny. Hey fucker, that was fun.
Very fun. But when it flips, sky goes black, we get this shaft of light, and it feels like, oh, he's going to die for real, because all the eyes of the gods feel like they turn to this moment. It gets highlighted in that way, and it was just really beautifully made, the way the spear sort of lights up, the Czernobog and Liam and Laura, like, tossing the coin, dodging, getting knocked back into his pot of gold, into his hoard, and then him, the hit, and then him the spear dragging on the ground, having gone through him, and then him, like, really great. I thought that was so well done.
Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
I was just going to say, I was getting back to the point of like selling things, and like they did a lot of selling in this episode, like how bookstores are great places to meet people. Like if you're depressed, try bowling. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I just think that, like, it's nice to have these little kind of selling moments in the episode.
Yeah, bowl harder.
Sure. Yeah, that's pretty much what I was saying.
That's
what did you think of the moment right before that where Mr. Wednesday doesn't step on the bear? Is that because of Czernobog? That he's being respectful of him or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It felt like intentional, but I don't know what the intention was.
Yeah, I thought when he was going to be getting dragged back across that same thing, that maybe like he was planting like something to help him out there, but I don't know.
Yeah. One thing, as I'm working backwards at these scenes, loved that we got a scene with Ian McShane, Crispin Glover, and Peter Stormare all in the same place.
Yeah.
Super fun. Chaotic energy across the board, I thought.
Yeah. God, I just wonder, like, what do you think Ian McShane felt like when he was making this episode? Is there any,
that's a
like,
great question, Justin. Thanks.
I wish we knew, because I love getting inside actors' heads in these moments, especially someone like Ian McShane, what a storied performer. Mm-hmm. I wish
that's so weird that you bring that up.
It's weird because it's like that actor seems so crazy. Like if you talk to him, like could you make sense of it at all? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like would it be worth bringing up? You know what I mean?
Would it be worth bringing up? I guess that's the real question.
That is.
Yeah.
So it's funny you guys actually bring this up because I did interview Ian McShane about this episode for my day job.
No.
I know. I can't believe it. Total coincidence.
Well, I guess I only got 2 wishes left on this monkey's paw because I was just saying that to you.
Wow, are you sweating from working that nut flex so hard?
Yeah, I think so. Wow. He was great, first of all. I mean, Ian McShane, exactly as Ian McShaney as you would expect. Only went on 2 wild rants over the course of our chat.
That's awesome.
But he was really good. And, something that I think we've done a ridiculous amount of interviews, and something that I think you always hope for is somebody to be very frank about stuff rather than just repeating the party line. And he is a storied enough actor that he was very frank about everything. I mean, I just pulled up the interview. I'll just read like a couple of little things that I thought were interesting. I asked him about the death scene and what that was like, and his reaction, I was like, what was going through your head? And he said, when can I get out of this fucking cold, freezing Canadian evening? That was
good.
His exact quote, exactly what you'd expect.
Olivier said the same thing, I believe, when he was treading the boards.
He also was very frank about the show in general, which I thought was interesting, that he said that he felt like season 1, he felt like was overpraised, and he felt like season 2 was underpraised, and season 3 has been an interesting journey so far. Which I thought was kind of an interesting look at it. He also said that when I talked to him about just the general arc of the season, because we've talked about this quite a bit, I think Wednesday has been very different this season. He's been going into this depression, dragging himself around like he does this episode. And specifically the thing that he said was he was just glad that it was a different mode than traveling around in a car with Ricky Whittle being like, there's a war coming, and that's pretty much it. So not exactly throwing the show under the bus, but definitely he was like, at least we were doing something different this season. And the biggest thing
breaks
that
my
I thought,
fucking heart that he didn't like the car scenes. It just breaks
I'm
my
sorry,
fucking
he
heart.
specifically slammed the car, and he's like, we have bad cars on this show.
Oh my God. All right. I hate this guy.
He didn't say that. He didn't say that.
He was like, these cars want to be free, but we don't let them. We drive them. We're driving these cars, is what he said. That's the way it's meant to be.
Yeah. The one quote that I will read that sort of raised my eyebrow, and I expect there was going to be some sort of email from Stars being like, hey, maybe don't run this quote. Not that it's the most reactionary thing, but at the end I did ask him about any talks for season 4. Apparently Neil Gaiman has reportedly been working with the showrunner on coming up with some ideas, so I asked him about that. And he said, I expect season 4, I have no idea, but if they wait around another 2 years, I mean, I'm not going to be around. Thank you.
Wow.
So yeah, there you go.
Interesting you said 2 years specifically.
Well, because this season took 2 years, right? Like, I think that's what he was saying, is if it's the same length of process, he's just not into it at this point. So it was interesting. And the other thing, I mean, apropos of this exact scene that we're talking about with Peter Stormare and Crispin Glover, apparently they wanted to shorten it down, and he, as a producer, was like, no, you got 3 of us in a room. Keep it the right length. Have us do what we want to do. Come on, what are you doing here?
Well, so, and I will say, I get why the show is like, we're just going to keep this short because like, not much really happened in that scene,
right?
Yeah.
But they were just like, all right, let's meet up, and they were like, nope, we're feeling pretty confident later. So the fact that there was so much posturing and like setup to it, I get it. But I also get it was cool to see. It was a cool scene to see.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I felt like. I was like, oh, good. They got them all in a room. That's nice. I'm happy about that.
And I have an interesting question when it talks about like the use of real estate in this show and this episode in particular. End of last episode, Shadow, big tease going to Florida. And we're like, ooh, Florida, that's going to be weird.
Yeah.
This episode, we don't see him in Florida. He just talks about how he went to Florida cold with no flashback, just like, I was in Florida. So I was like, oh, weird. Did they just cut a scene in Florida? I feel like that would make a lot of sense as like a cold open or whatever. And yet in this episode, there was so much fat in a lot of the scenes, I thought. There's the scene with Liam and Laura where they're just like literally bullshitting about like philosophy. I was like, show me Florida. I don't need to see more leprechaun
that was
talk.
Super weird, particularly when you, like you're saying, leaving off an episode with that, there is an expectation you're going to see that thing. We saw a
100%.
moving poster, for God's sake. But it turns out all he was doing was going down there to be like, oh, your son's not there? The landlord, the one that I'm fucking in the hot tub, his son's not there? Okay, cool. And then headed back, and that was it. Which could have also been accomplished with a phone call.
It's a fair point.
Could have been an email.
It could have been an email. I would have loved if a lot of this stuff, if he was like, oh, let me just do a quick Google search to see if the clunker sunk. Okay, great. And let me just email Czernobog to set up that quick meeting. Maybe do a Zoom. They should have done a Zoom for the big meeting.
It's not just a clunker, USO. All right, so first off, don't bury the lead here. What was the two, as someone who loves a good rant, what are the 2 rants he went on?
Sure. The 2 rants that he went on, I don't know if you guys watched the show Kings that he used to be on, which is awesome. If you've never watched it, it's a retelling of the David and Goliath Bible story, but set in present day America where there's a royal family. So it's a very weird concept, very weird show.
That's a veggie tale, right? It's a veggie tale?
Yeah, it's a veggie tale. He plays the tomato. No, it's from Michael Green, who co-created. He co-created American Gods, right?
Yeah,
with Brian Fuller, I think.
Yeah, I believe that's right.
So it's a similarly like very visual, very weird. It's also like kind of King Leary, where he goes crazy. And spoiler, but in the last episodes, he's doing the King Lear in the rain, shouting at the sky thing. So he plays the king in that. So I love that show. I asked him about that specifically because I feel like there's a little bit of a sense of his king and that arc there and what he's been doing with Wednesday. And that just led to a rant about NBC and how they fucked over that show and all the executives got fired and they put it on at Saturday at like 10 p.m. And then it actually ended up being a two-part thing because then I said, well, that's the sort of show that I feel like would have done better on streaming versus on broadcast, which I do think is true. And you can stream it weirdly on NBC.com. So anybody listening to this podcast, go check out that show. It's fantastic. But that somehow led to him ranting about Christopher Hitchens videos on YouTube and how he'll shut down religion in 10 seconds. Thankfully, he got it back on track to bring it back to American Gods, so it was all good, and we can go on with the interview. But there was a point in the middle of him talking there, I was like, what do I ask him about
Just
next?
really sweating. Zalman sweat wiping off the brow.
Okay. The other thing, actually, and then we can move on from this interview, but he also, without coming out and saying it, sounds like he was really not happy about the switching up Mr. Worlds.
Oh, yes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone working on the show had to be like, what is this? What is all this?
Yeah, what are you doing here?
Yeah, that's funny.
It was fun to see Danny Trejo, and so
Totally. Well, like we talked about on the podcast, I think the two other actors who played Mr. World and Ms. World, respectively, were both good, but they're not they're not the same energy as Crispin Glover. You can't do that.
Yeah, it is just one of those things where because it takes you out of the show. Like there's no way to really not do that unless you have an overcomplicated
yeah. But if you
answer.
think about like the different arcs, like if it was all Crispin Glover, it would have been cool, but it would have been creepy and Tony, like totally not the same. Like the fact that we got to switch it up, like they put the right people at the right time for those moments. Like it was so intimidating having Danny Trejo and be in those parts, and so fun having her in that technical boy world that I think the other two would have made different choices with. So I don't know. I can understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I had a lot of fun with the different acting styles and characters. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to be honest, when I was watching Danny Trejo, my main thought was I could really go for a taco right now.
I mean, I went out and got tacos after we talked about it. So I mean,
Again, talking about Danny Trejo's L.A. Taco restaurant.
That only a few people have an actual access to.
Yeah, very few.
Great. I'm sure there were other things about this episode that we could talk about, though. Any moments that you guys want to call out?
yeah, I want to talk about the shot of the Cadillac hearse with the spear in the back was just really a lot of fun. That was just great. You know?
So your two favorite things, an inanimate object carrying an inanimate object?
Yeah.
Nice.
It was really nice.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
You've been inside for too long, perhaps.
No, but I mean, it's a hearse that's carrying this spear that may be killing, Odin. I mean, that's pretty awesome. And it's in a Cadillac. I mean, come on.
One other reason, while we're talking about killing Odin, why I think it is all part of Wednesday's plan. When the spear is coming toward him, if you watch his hands, they go out to his side as if like, all right,
he's
I knew
welcoming
this.
it.
Yeah, he knew. It looks like he sort of is like, I see this. It's not like he was bringing his hands up or trying to get out of the way. He was opening himself up and raising his arms out in a very accepting position. So take that however you will. No real revelations about Cordelia. She's definitely a character in the show, but we don't know what she's in. She keeps seeming important. Like she's like, "Hey, well, you need to be having fun," and he's like, "Yeah, I know." And she's like, "I'm important." She like sort of talks about how her role. Yeah, we don't know what it means.
Yeah, I thought there was going to be some sort of revelation about that this episode, but nope, nothing.
Yeah.
Speaking of revelations, it turns out that the Big Dipper is actually Odin's dick.
Pete, what astronomy class are you taking? Is the porn?
No, well, that's what
is it
that's
the
what
Pornhub
Wednesday
one?
said. That's what Wednesday. They're at the fucking thing, looking up at the stars. He's like, "You guys call it the Big Dipper. I call it Odin's Wang." And I was like, "Holy shit!" They just did that bit in the show.
I mean, every Constellation can be a dick if you try hard enough.
Oh my god.
Just same as
Cassiopeia, very wavy dick.
yeah, Cassiopenis.
Oh my god.
Any connect the dots. Stars are just a big connect the dots, and I learned in grade school you can connect the dots in any way you want.
Wow.
Orion's belt, sideways dick.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry I brought this up, guys. I
You
thought
know,
it might be funny, but
you
guys...
did bring it up in a way where it was like really aiming at it.
What did you think about Laura turning down sex for Liam? I know we joked about that earlier, but I like that moment. I mean, it's a kind of ridiculous growth point to point out about a character, but I appreciated it, and I think Emily Browning played it very well.
Yeah, it was interesting how, again, a lot of time with Laura and Liam when their relationship amounted to like, nah, we're just sort of working together briefly. Because this whole thing was like I want to feel something. If it was meant to show her growth, I'm here for it. Because I like the character, and I like that that was a big part of her time in Purgatory, was like, hey, you're not at fault for a lot of the things that you blame yourself for in your life. So you don't need to do these damaging things to yourself to deal with them. And if that was showing that she learned that lesson, then I think it was great.
I also like that very clearly Ian Rion was talked to his agents and managers and was like, give me a non-creepy part. Will that be okay?
Yeah.
Just like a very romantic leprechaun or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. And those are hard to get. Romantic leprechaun roles, very rare.
Well, I think it's also...
Liam, the Lucky from Lucky Charms.
Yep,
and that's pretty much it.
Huge romantic lead.
I think it's nice when two characters can like just kind of do the right thing and not have it be for sex or whatever. You know what I mean? I thought it was nice. I agree it showed her growth, but also on his part to be like, I'm doing this for the right reasons. I'm not going to fuck you over, and I'm not going to like steal the coin and like run away and leave you high and dry. So I like the fact that like these are two people kind of dealing with morals, dealing with the right thing, and I thought it was nice.
I agree. Yep. But it's especially, I don't know if you're getting following this scandal, but the Lucky from Lucky Charms actually ended up hooking up with the Honey Nut Cheerios bee. So the end of that romantic comedy, and it was pretty intense.
Yeah. Lucky put up this gross tweet saying, I just gave her a honey of an O.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I was like, whoa. Delete your account, buddy.
Yeah. Delete your account, cereal brand.
TMI.
And let's just remember, Pete made us say this because he brought up all that star penis stuff.
Any final notes, any other things for the episode that you guys want to mention before we start to wrap up here?
Shadow and the landlord, their relationship, she's on her way out. He's like, I'll go anywhere with you. Yet he had a dream where she drowned him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Hey, sometimes... You just got to keep it purple, man. All right? Just keep it purple.
Keep it purple?
Yeah, that's what she says to him. She was like, here, you can take my Thunderbird. Just keep it purple, man. Keep it purple.
Okay. All right. It was a car thing.
I think she meant the car specifically. I don't think she was speaking metaphorically there.
No, she was like, jump in the water and keep it purple, man. That's what she was saying. Like, that's what I like about you, gentlemen. You're not afraid to jump in that ice water and keep it purple.
Yo, first off, keep it purple is a great catchphrase for you. And it's also, there's a lot of weird things being said on this podcast right now, sexual things. That's the most weird and the most sexual. And you're saying it, Pete. You. Keep it purple.
What I got from the hot tub moment is I think it's less about landlord and it's more about the town. What he was getting there is exactly what Hinzelman tells him afterwards, that everybody in the town knows about this. Of course, they can figure out that kids are dying or disappearing every couple of years, but they choose to ignore it because they're happy. And that, I think he was putting those things together in his mind, in his dream. It's not specifically about Marguerite, though that's exactly what she tells him afterwards, is that she kind of just assumed, I think it was her own son, right?
Yeah.
Left and just didn't bother to contact him. And that's part of the horrible magic of this town. So it's not about her drowning Shadow Moon so much as he is in a tub at the time and he realizes that the town will kill him if he gives it enough time.
But the song playing in the background was hilarious.
What was the song?
Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba?
It was Purple
Cotton
Rain.
Eye
No,
Joe.
it was like the song was changing to what was going on. It started all like soft or whatever, and then it was like, "You're gonna die." It was like the lyrics were really funny and well timed.
Good stuff. Before we wrap up here, who is worthy of your worship this episode? Pete, who are you worshiping?
Wow. I gotta give it up for Shadow Moon, the Moon Shadow, for the fact that he finally stopped all the deaths of those cars that went underneath the water and the ice, and it's just I'm glad it finally stops. This is my favorite episode because they set that up and then walked away, and it's been killing me ever since. So I'm glad we got that closure because killing cars like this shouldn't happen anywhere in no town.
I just have 9 follow-up questions real quick, Pete. How do you know when a car's dead? Is it just out of gas?
A car is not dead if it's out of gas.
When is a car dead?
What are you doing to cars when they're out of gas?
When is a car like a writing
them?
desk?
Oh, that's what
bright?
the driver's ed teacher, the joke the driver's ed teacher would say.
Yeah, not a good joke.
When a car is dead, when what? It has to be fully immersed in water?
No. What?
Because you keep talking about cars being dead as like a real tragedy. I'm just trying to get a handle on when it goes down like that.
Well, it's just the fact that these people are giving up on these cars and okay with the fact that they're just drowning these cars off this coastline. I mean, first off, that's not good for the poor fish and stuff that's got to live in this water. But the fact that it's just a horrible way to treat cars, man.
I'm going to go over to Justin now for who he's worshiping this episode. Justin, who are you worshiping this episode?
Literal rabbit hole we just ran down.
I don't know what was going on there.
What's the car called? Rabbit? Like a Honda rabbit hole we just went down?
That's what Pete likes to stick the gear shift up.
Yeah.
The Honda rabbit hole.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to give it up for... It was great to see Czernobog. Honestly, the character I was the most excited about seeing was Czernobog here. I love Peter Stormare coming in. He's just so funny. The way that he both doesn't really like Wednesday, is sort of bored by everything, but also is still the heavy, and he still comes through, or tries to come through right at the end to protect Wednesday from Laura. It was great to see him.
I'm going to give it up to Mr. Wednesday this episode, my boy Ian McShane. Love to call him, love to jump on the phone with him just anytime. McShay. No, I really actually have liked what Mr. Wednesday has been doing in this season, and it's been a different mode for him, and I liked it in this episode. I think pretty obviously it is not an end here. There is going to be more of Mr. Wednesday that we're going to see going to the finale, but it'll be interesting to see how that all turns out and how that plays, because it is otherwise a very definitive ending here, so that should be cool to check out. And folks, that is it for this week's episode of American Godcast. If you'd like to support us, patreon.com/comicbookclub. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Crowdcast and YouTube. Come hang out. We will chat with you about American Gods, iTunes, Android, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice to subscribe, follow, and listen to the show. On iTunes, leave us a rating and a comment. We love those.
Love it.
So good. At A Godcast on Twitter, comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and more. Until next time, keep it purple.
Keep it purple.